We're good. Okay, so my choice for 2018, number 3 is Isle of Dogs.
Trash.
What?
Whoa.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding. I know you love that movie.
You damn right I do. You're just as much of a dog person as I am, so I'm surprised you didn't love it more.
Is this a dog lovers movie?
I think so.
I think it's just Wes Anderson
doing anime.
Yeah.
No.
Well, he
no.
did Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Yeah. No. It's both. If you're a fan of Wes Anderson, you'll appreciate this movie. If you're a fan of freaking dogs, you'll appreciate this movie. I loved it. I remember.
It was a very sweet movie.
It was the most endearing movies I've seen in years. I remember after leaving the theater, I was like, I want to buy this movie. You know, you feel that way sometimes when you watch certain Pixar movies, but this was very, very different. It didn't have the same kind of shtick and obnoxious caricatures that you would see often in Pixar movies. This was a much more adult. It felt like an indie film with claymation.
Yeah.
So I really, really loved it. I like not everything Wes Anderson does. I hated Running with Scissors. I thought it was really pretentious.
He's like the A24 of directors.
You never know what you're going to get with him. I mean, he can make great films like Moonrise Kingdom, but he can also make Running with Scissors, which is really pretentious and obnoxious. The Life Aquatic, I heard, was amazing.
So good.
I've never heard anyone say I didn't like The Life Aquatic. Yeah. Everyone ever talked is like, it's so good.
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, even Morgan dug that movie.
Yeah,
man.
I love The Life Aquatic. Yeah.
Okay, now I'm going to have to check
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It helps that the soundtrack is all David Bowie songs in Portuguese.
Jesus Christ.
Bill
Are you
Murray.
serious?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Bill Murray
Why don't I own this movie?
I don't know, but
Huge
it's a
fan of it.
fantastic movie.
Yeah, but that's my number 3 is Isle of Dogs. Can't go wrong with that. Very, very comfortable putting
It's a
that as
good
my number
choice.
3.
I really enjoyed that one. Yeah.
I'm glad. And Miss Heather, what's your number 3?
Oh, we're going to me. Okay.
Oh.
Awesome.
Here goes my number 1.
Maybe. Actually, I'm going to go with The Meg.
Oh,
Yes.
Move over.
Maggie's excited.
Move over.
This is also my number 3. I don't like you, Heather.
Dang.
You just like my choices. No, I really enjoyed
Wow.
this movie. I had a great time with it. and
Exactly. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. It
Super fun movie.
yeah.
I love the Meg.
It had a good sense of humor, a good action.
Did you see the Meg?
Yeah, I did see the Meg. I liked it. It is fun. My favorite shark movie peak is probably Jaws and Deep Blue Sea. I like
Same.
Deep Blue Sea more than the Meg, so maybe that's why the Meg let me down, because I was expecting a bigger version of Deep Blue Sea, and it was good. Yeah, it was good. It was fun.
See, I was fully expecting for the Meg to be absolutely ridiculous,
Yeah.
and it was.
Right.
So I was,
But, like, in all the
very
right
happy.
ways.
Yes, I was very
Yeah.
happy with it.
Self-aware, like you knew it was campy.
Yeah, it definitely did. And it had a couple of throwback references to Jaws, which is funny.
Yeah.
The dog in the boat was named
Yeah.
Pippin, although this Pippin lived, unlike the
Yeah.
other Pippin.
Like sees it and then takes off like, nope, going this way. Yeah. It was just a good, popcorn flick.
Yeah, good pick. Good pick.
Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. That was also my number 3. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, you're coming up here shortly. Yeah, I think let's preface this with 2018 obviously is the most recent year we're talking about. So it doesn't give us a lot of time to digest all of these movies that have come out. Comparatively, we've seen the 2010 stuff and all the early stuff in the decade probably several times, multiple times. I don't know that I've seen a lot of these movies on my list more than once. So a lot of this is probably going to be like the year that I get shit on a lot, because a lot of these are very superficial movies, and it's interesting to make this list. So number 3 for me is a tie between Den of Thieves, which is a criminal heist film with Gerard Butler, O'Shea Jackson, and some other folks, some 50 Cent's in it.
I was about to say, for some of the
50
people
Cent
who
is
don't
in
know.
it. Yeah, 50 Cent is in it. But I'm a sucker for these gangster movies and these like urban police dramas, and this is that at its heart. Very reminiscent of like Street Kings or Training Day with a bigger crew. Yeah, it's an extension of that. But they get creative with the bank heists in this movie, and I really love that. The last 20 minutes, the shootout scene within like a traffic jam on a major city, like streets and underpasses, is one of the more intense shootout scenes I've seen.
Sounds
This
like
is-
Chips.
No, the comparison for this movie is actually Heat. This is like Heat's baby.
Oh, that's a bold statement.
This is like Heat's baby brother. So
Negative.
That is very.
have you seen Den of
interesting.
Thieves?
Yes.
Okay, from the onset, the style of the film is very Heat-esque. The masks that the guys are wearing, this is like an homage to Heat that's not perfectly executed because it's more playful and it's more urban. And Gerard Butler is overacting throughout the entirety of the film. But it's good because of those reasons. Like it's fun to see Gerard Butler as a drunk detective addicted to strip clubs, and he
That
takes
sounds
it
like
out.
Gerard Butler in every movie.
Sounds like Gerard Butler in real life.
Well, yeah. I mean, I like to refer to him as P.S. I love you, Gerard Butler.
Oh,
but
save.
okay, that's the Canadian sentimentalist in me, I suppose. But Gerard Butler in Den of Thieves goes overboard. He's like what I'd imagine Russell Crowe if he was a detective drunk all the time being. He channeled his inner Russell Crowe drunk in this movie, or Scottish drunk guy. And yeah, I just liked it a lot. It was very entertaining. The heists are well executed. They're very suspenseful, intense. There's a twist ending that is okay and kind of polarizing. But yeah, from start to finish, it was pretty fun. And this is a tie with Suspiria for number 3, the Suspiria remake, which is a different animal completely. And there's a lot to talk about that movie, so I won't get it too in depth. But it is really enthralling, and just for 2.5 hours it demands a lot of the viewer for the context of what the movie's about. It's about a girl played by Dakota Johnson who wanders into like I don't even know if this is like Ukraine or Germany. It's
I
a
think it's German.
it's a middle European country in the middle of winter, and she gets accepted into like this dance school, and she's really just there for like shelter and just getting into the very beginning phases of the dance school and learning what's going on. But she ends up sort of gaining the attention of the elders that are all in place at this dance school, and they have some sinister aspects about them that she gets turned onto as the plot develops and furthers. There's a lot of subplots going on too, but anyways, it turns out that the group may be a coven of witches from ancient times that are looking for like a recruit that has a supernatural connection to the spirit of this really grotesque elderly witch, and yeah, it all comes to a head in the last 30 minutes of this movie, and I can't remember a more fun and sort of viscerally pleasing aesthetic to wrap up a horror movie than the last 20 to 25 minutes of this movie. Have you seen Suspiria? Anyone at this table?
Yes.
Okay, so you know what I'm talking about with the last 20 minutes.
I do.
It's
I was not a big
it's
fan
ballet.
of Suspiria.
Okay, that's
like,
fine.
It was. I really wanted to like it. I really, really wanted to like it, and I felt like you mentioned that they do have a lot of subplots, and I feel like a lot of those subplots didn't go anywhere and didn't add any overall value to the story. And there was a lot of things that were in the movie that didn't lead to anything. It was just like kind of just.
That's fair.
But I mean, but yeah, the last 20, 30 minutes is some of the craziest shit I've ever seen in a movie before.
Yes.
So,
And I won't say that saved the movie for me, but up to that point, I'm not fully on board with what you're saying, but I get why you're saying it. Like the nuances of the plot with the next door neighbor, the old man that's sort of like putting this all together as Dakota Johnson's character is putting it together. There's like this weird Chloe Moretz Grace. I even forgot that she was in this movie because she's only in it for very minor portions. Yeah, and Yeah, and what I'm saying is I forgot like her role in the movie.
Yeah.
And so this movie doesn't do a good job of like heightening the small stuff going on, but the big stuff, the big plot going on, I thought it did a phenomenal job with. What's her name? The lead dance teacher.
Tilda Swinton.
Yeah, Tilda Swinton's great in this movie. She's really she's like, you're not sure if she's menacing or if she's got good intentions, all the way until the very end. And there are some very gross body contortion scenes in this film as well. But yeah, that's Suspiria and Den of Thieves, two very different movies at number 3.
All right, so Morgan, what is your pick again?
The Meg.
Shocker.
Tell us more.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
You would think you
I-
guys went to see this together.
I know, it seems like
you
I
would
went to
think
see a lot of
we,
movies
we-
together.
Yeah, we don't see any movies together, so it's
No.
interesting.
Would you like to add anything else to the?
No, I'm good. The Meg,
Is there anything else to add to the
No,
Meg?
there's not much
Giant
to add.
shark attacks underwater
I didn't say it was
facility.
a deep, a deep
Ah.
movie, but I didn't mean it like that. But it was just fun. I really enjoyed it, and
It is what it is, and it's
Yeah.
great.
exactly.
So it knows what it is. It's not trying to be a blockbuster. Like it's not
Mhm.
trying to be a. It's not trying to be an
A
Oscar
serious movie?
It's,
Uh-uh.
it's not
No,
trying to
not
be.
at all.
Yeah, it just pokes fun at itself. It pokes fun at other movies. It's great.
Yeah.
So
Has there ever been a serious shark movie besides Jaws? Like one that actually was trying to. Oh, I guess 47 meters
I was about to
down,
say
but that's a
47
piece of
meters
shit.
down.
That's a survival horror movie. I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about-
open water?
Open water.
Shallows
yeah.
or
Yeah,
whatever.
The Shallows.
The
Oh
Shallows,
yeah, that's
yeah.
a serious one with
See, any-
Blake Lively.
yeah,
I
I've
like
seen
that a
every
lot,
shark
actually.
movie.
That
I
is a
haven't
good
seen that
movie.
one.
Yeah,
Does
we
Blake
liked it.
Lively have anything to do with that?
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah, he doesn't like Blake Lively.
Oh, okay.
I do.
Yeah, Maggie has a big crush on I do on Blake Lively. She's
I
like,
do.
There's a series of movies that I keep seeing online. It's like the 2-headed shark attack and the 3-headed shark attack,
that
and then it jumps
Sharknado.
and then it jumps to the 5-headed shark attack and the 6-headed shark attack. There's
Dang.
no 4-headed shark attack. And it
Get me that
bothers
Blu-ray collection.
I know, right?
Is that what Danny Trejo?
Probably.
I think he's in
He plays all 5 heads of the shark.
Yes. All right. Well, keeping on to Sasha's theme, I also have 2 picks for my number 3.
Oh, glad we
Yeah.
combined
Kept
then.
our succinct.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So, my first pick is The Incredibles 2. This was like a good 10, 15 years in between the first one, and it starts off right where I left off. It was absolutely worth the wait. There were scenes with Baby Jack that were hilarious with the stylist. I want their own movie because I don't think I've laughed so hard in the theater, and it was great. I freaking love that movie, and I made Miguel watch The Incredibles because he hasn't seen it until right before the second one came out, and he loved it just as much as I did too. So, Incredibles 2, great movie. And then my other pick is also an animated movie. It's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Oh yeah.
Good
nice.
choice.
Yeah.
So we actually saw this movie kind of late whenever it came out. I think it came out in, like November.
We kind of blew it off. We thought it was just a
Well,
kids movie.
we didn't blow it off. I mean, it's holiday, so we didn't have a lot of time to go into the theater and stuff. And then we didn't go see it until January,
Yeah.
until like mid-January, and it's still playing, which is kind of unheard of for a movie to be out for 2.5 months at the theater. And whenever we went, the theater was still full.
Yeah.
And I mean, we went at like 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon. It wasn't even a late showing, so it's crazy that it had just that much, just
Like staying power. Yeah,
and
it
like
really did.
rewatchability. And even on Netflix, I've seen it a couple of times on Netflix, and I mean, I've seen Incredible 2 on Netflix too several times.
Yeah, that was one of the
So
ones,
watching
like
it.
you said earlier, in the theater. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm buying this movie. Like when
Yeah.
it comes out,
It's
for sure.
it's great. The music's great. It really Sony. I mean, their Spider-Man movie, their animated Spider-Man is so good, and they're coming out with the second one in April 2022. I think I read.
Nice.
Way too long.
Well, considering all of the animation that went into it, like you can tell that they were. I mean, they really spent a lot of time on the making of the movie, which I don't mind waiting until 2022 to get that kind of movie ready. I want to say like art, but I mean, it kind of
Well, it
is an
is,
art
yeah.
because it's a different animated style, and they got to do crazy things with Spider-Man, and it's so cool to see Miles Morales come on screen, even if it is an animated version. But yeah, it's such a fun movie.
Well, it was
A lot
nice
more fun than-
to not see just another origin story.
Yeah.
The
Exactly.
same thing that we've seen over and over and over again.
with
Yeah.
Spider-Man, even like because we've had to
Yeah.
go through 3 Spider-Man iterations in just 15 years. I mean, yeah,
And he's not even that interesting, in my opinion. But,
he's not. I mean, Spider-Man. Yeah, I don't get it. I've got friends who are major Spider-Man fanboys,
Mhm.
and I guess if you grew up, he was one of the more accessible comics, and I guess that's where it hinges,
Maybe.
like the fanboy.
Well, he's kind of younger than all the other
Yeah, that
ones to
too.
begin with, so I guess he's like a little bit more relatable.
Mhm.
So
he's a struggling college boy. Most of the arcs and tropes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll comment on that too.
okay, go ahead.
No, I was dismissive of it when I saw Into the Spider-Verse in the trailer. I was like, that looks like kind of a cute little kids movie, something that Nickelodeon might have produced or Disney or whatever. There's a talking fucking pig in there. I'm just like, I'm not gonna take this seriously. And then we watched, and I was like, this is probably the smartest writing I've ever seen in a Spider-Man movie. Holy shit, I
It's
loved it.
so good.
It was so much better than it needed to be. It just could have been a
Yeah.
cute kids movie using Miles Morales, but it wasn't. It was so smart and funny. It had a great surprise in it. It had the perfect arc. It was just such a well-written movie, and I'm very excited for the second one.
All right, so that leads back to you. What's your number 2 pick?
My number 2 is, let me pull that up because I'm trying to remember which one I circled as number 2. I had a struggle because I had a lot of honorable mentions this year. Pull it back up there.
Oliver says to hurry.
For 2018. My number 2 was Ready Player One.
Thought you were gonna say
Good
the
choice.
Meg.
No.
Right?
Fuck that, man. I didn't bother to see that damn movie. And I remember the reason I had to look this up is because I was trying to remember if between this and Fallout, because I loved Mission Impossible Fallout. One thing I loved about that movie is it's like we're like 5 or 6 sequels into the damn series, and arguably they keep getting better.
Still pretty high quality.
Yeah.
I mean, we had this talk on the best trilogies. I'm a fanboy for the first 3 more than the last 3, but that's just because I see what the action franchises have turned into, like
Yeah.
with Fast and Furious, and even the Terminator to some degree. It's like big set piece after big set piece,
Yeah.
and strings together. Mission Impossible does it well because it's hard to say this, but it's grounded in reality, but not really. But
is.
it's stuff that you
It's-
could see Ethan Hunt doing versus like The Rock doing.
Exactly.
Just because The Rock's a behemoth of a guy doesn't mean he can fucking sway off the side of a canyon
Yeah.
and keep a car afloat holding multi cars with his chains. Sorry,
Yeah,
that's
it's
a Hobbs and
ridiculous.
Shaw shot
It
there.
is. It's absolutely
because I like this.
One thing about Mission Impossible is that they're smart enough to be grounded.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna go ahead and say it is a tie. It's a tie between.
Might as well at this point.
It really is. It really is. It's a tie between Fallout and basically Ready Player One. Ready Player One. There were aspects about it because I was such a huge fan of the book. I read it like 4 times.
Yeah, me too.
Love Ready Player One. The book. There were things and tropes in the book that I wish they would have carried over to the movie, like Max Headroom, the ship. There were fun little tropes that were very 80s that they didn't carry over, and I think that Spielberg, with the go ahead with the writer, wanted to go ahead and be like, you know what?
Klein.
Klein, I guess he approved it. He was on
Yeah.
set all the time.
Yeah.
They made it more 90s instead of just 80s. And the book
Yeah.
was all about the 80s.
Yeah.
In the 90s, in the movie, we got Mortal Kombat. We got Tracer from Overwatch. There was a lot of different tropes and things from the 2000s and 90s. And I think that's because Spielberg wanted to have it more of a universal appeal, which is fine. If you're going to make a movie, you want to apply it to a broader audience, and that's cool. Part of me wishes it would have had the cojones just to stick with the 80s more. But at the same time, I acknowledge why they didn't. Still a damn good movie. Every time it's on one of the HBOs every night.
Pretty much.
It
Yeah.
Seems
really is.
like it.
It is, and every single time it's on, I watch it.
Yeah.
So it's still a damn good movie, and that's why quite comfortably, it's my number 2. Yes, tied with Fallout.
Nice.
Yeah, and special shout out to Heather. She was kind enough to let me borrow the audiobook for
yeah.
Ready Player
Really?
One. So yeah, I got to read the book. Well,
Got to listen
people
to the
say
book?
read. I got to listen to the book. Yeah, sorry. I'm not gonna say read.
I have read it and listened to it.
You know-
I love that book a lot.
My only critique of the movie was I thought they tried too hard with all the 80s references, honestly.
Really?
I did, But it's a small thing. It didn't bug me that much. Still love the movie.
But it really pulls that from the source material because
Yeah.
everything in the book is a reference to something.
Where the novelty of Ready Player One is about the
Yeah.
80s.
yeah.
There might be a little couple things here from the 90s and 2000s, but the book is all
About
about
the
the
80s.
80s.
Well, I
and
feel like
that's-
even though they changed things, like obviously being a huge fan of it before I saw the movie, I was going in with high expectations, but also a little cautious because I'm like, they're going to screw up this thing that I love, you know,
yeah,
because that generally happens. And while they did make a lot of changes, I feel like it was still the same spirit as the book.
it really was. Yeah,
You know, so like as you're watching, you're like, okay, I see why they did this because this is definitely more cinematic than what was in the book.
yeah,
But you still get that same feeling from it. And
you really do.
I don't know. I really enjoyed it
It's
too.
unapologetic nostalgia and fanboyism, and just the funnest of ways.
Mhm.
That's what I loved about Klein's writing. It was just completely unapologetic and unadulterated about fandom. From that era,
Mhm.
you know, and he's stuck the landing with the book, and Spielberg stuck the landing with the movie.
It was
So-
nice to see Steven Spielberg sort of go back to his roots
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
in this version because he'd stuck to like the historical drama stuff pretty
He did.
stingily
What
in
was
this
that one about the
decade.
Cold War and the wall?
Bridge of Spies.
Bridge of
Bridge of Spies.
Spies.
Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, I loved Bridge of
That's good.
Spies, but yeah, that's what he got stuck on.
Yeah,
And
well,
to
that
Band-
sort of vibe.
Band of Brothers was
Yeah,
just so
great-
good.
yeah,
I love Band of Brothers. I love Bridge of
Yeah.
Spies. So don't get me wrong.
I think
that's
that was
cool,
like
but-
his phase of adding on to his repertoire because Saving Private Ryan was around there
Around then,
too,
before,
and
yeah.
he was trying to detach himself from the 20th century stuff that he did that he
The sci-fi
made a name
shtick.
for, sure.
Yeah.
And this was, I mean, the movie's partially about him in many ways too, and all the nostalgia that he created with his filmmaking and the sort of iconic characters that he brought to the screen with, E.T.
What's funny is he didn't include E.T. and other stuff
Right.
because
He
he
didn't
didn't want
use
to
his own
seem
references.
masturbatory and
Yeah.
which
Mhm.
conceited, which pissed me off. I'm like, you're Steven Spielberg. If anyone
Right.
has the right to do an ode to
It's
themselves,
you.
it's you,
But-
motherfucker. Like,
But I mean, the T-Rex from Jurassic Park's in it too.
yeah, we had the T-Rex. Okay, we didn't get any E.T. We didn't. We got Back to the Future, but that's more Zemeckis.
Zemeckis,
He's
yeah.
the producer.
And I was
there.
going to say the only other guy who could have pulled this off, I think, was Robert Zemeckis, but he's a little too far removed from this vibe of movie. And Spielberg was the right choice. And yeah, glad he was on board and glad it was
Yeah.
a team effort.
Well,
for
I
sure.
knew it was a big deal whenever he jumped on board because whenever they said Steven Spielberg got the rights,
Mhm.
I
Well,
was
he could be Spielborg too.
Maybe.
Borg too.
In an
When
Yeah.
alternate universe.
Spielberg, when he got the rights, I thought to myself, he's going to be a producer. I had absolutely
Right,
no idea
yeah.
that he was going to be
Yeah.
the director. I was like, he's directing this. They're taking this seriously. That's awesome. But again, yeah, like I said, he stuck the landing, and it's why it's my number 2 of the year.
Nice.
Good choice.
Good pick. All right, Heather.
I'm gonna have to go with Infinity War as my second choice.
Oh yeah, it's
That was an
not on
honorable
my
mention.
list at
No,
all.
I know. I knew it wouldn't be. I figured that one was safe.
Good choice.
I felt like this was a much better movie than Endgame, even though that was kind of the lead up to it. But
Light years.
it was such an event for this movie, and I thought it was a great movie. Like it left you in this place that you just didn't know how you were going to get back from, and
Yeah.
the rest of that is another year. But
And the way it was excruciating between the two because they left it off as such like a.
mhm.
No one had any idea that was going to happen.
No.
Like the snap was going to happen. Our favorite people are going to be gone. And it's just be like the original Avengers. No one could have predicted that.
Right, and it was so just watching, as people are disappearing, you're like, oh my gosh, like shit got real,
Yeah.
because it could be anybody, and
Mm-hmm.
then you're like every time they pan to somebody new, you're like, are they gonna, what's gonna happen, and
Right.
I just thought it was a really well done movie, actually.
I agree with you. Let me just interject with the. So if you look further out in the future and you see, where the Marvel MCU is going with their solo movies, even at the time we knew Black Panther 2 was coming,
Mhm.
we
Oh,
knew
yeah.
another Spider-Man was coming. So that lessened the impact of the last scene, but it still didn't
Well,
take away.
I wasn't under the impression that they weren't going to find a way back,
Right. Oh, okay.
So I
Right.
didn't think we
was
didn't know
just-
how it was going to happen.
I gotcha.
Exactly,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
the how it happened. I
Yeah.
think that caught a lot of people off guard versus the like sitting there and really contemplating, are all my favorite Marvel characters never going to be on the screen again? Which a
Right.
lot of people
Yeah.
did watching this movie. Like there were
No,
people
I know-
there were
well,
people
yeah.
crying. I'm
Oh,
not
yeah.
I'm not saying like
I never
anybody at
fell
this
into
table
that, but it
fell
was
into
also
that trap, but
watching it and the characters seeing these other characters that they're so close to
Yeah.
disappearing
Oh, yeah.
was really rough
Yes.
because that
the
they don't know what's
Spider-Man,
gonna
Iron
happen.
Man
Yeah.
dynamic, sure. Yeah. Fair enough.
Well,
But
and then the Bucky and Captain America. Where
well, they
it's like,
suckered us into the Spider-Man, Iron Man thing with Far From Home, and bringing in Robert Downey into half of that movie. So it was all very strategic. But yeah, it's still a
But
really
it
good movie.
worked well.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
did. That ending was crazy.
No.
Just to jump on that, the thing why I loved the first Infinity War more than Endgame was because of the fact that this is where the movie where they had to make the bad guy had an arc.
Mhm.
The bad guy won. That's what I love about this movie compared to any other superhero movie that I can remember. The bad guy wins at the end, and he watches the sunrise over a grateful universe.
Yeah, and he also makes you sit back and like assess how bad he really is.
Yeah,
Right, because you do kind of sympathize with him, or at least I did.
Hey,
Going,
when I'm in
"Oh,
traffic every day,
hey."
I sympathize with
Right?
Thanos. I'm like, if half of these cars weren't here, I'd sure
Well,
be getting
because
home
he's
quicker.
not just doing this to do it. There's a reason behind it. He's trying to
Balance.
bring balance back and all this. And I don't know. It's not just, oh, I'm killing half the population because I feel like I can.
Right.
Right, and that's what's great. So it's like, okay, so if you had the power to get rid of half the population, then why didn't you just provide more?
because then they won't learn.
Provide more, yeah.
Then they won't
Then-
learn. That's
It's
because
crazy.
But in his mind, that's with Thanos' logic. I get it. You're adding to the problem.
Yes.
You're not. It's like it's giving an alcoholic a shot of whiskey to make the pain go away, rather than
Taking care of it
taking
yourself.
care of it yourself.
And and removing the bottle
Exactly.
and breaking it on the street and saying, you're not going to have it.
Yeah. So
Deal- deal with it.
It's malicious
shades,
still, but
yes.
you get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why Infinity War was like leaps and bounds beyond what people's expectations were for a PG-13 Marvel movie, because it was serious in tone too, for sure.
Excellent.
All right. And Sasha, what's your pick for your second pick for 20?
Yeah, number 2, it's another tie, and I promise I'm not going to go on for too long here. Maybe I will. All right. The first one is Searching. It's
That was good.
John Cho or
Yeah.
Chu? Cho.
Show.
It's Harold. No, it's Harold,
Harold.
not Kumar.
Yes.
So it's
He's
Harold
also
from.
Sulu from the new Star Trek.
Yes.
Newer Star Trek movies.
So this movie is a kidnapping story about a dad who loses his high school daughter, and the entire movie is sort of rolled out via social media and
It's
electronics.
like the new version of the found footage movie because it's all through Facebook and webcams.
Webcams, iPhones.
Remember this? I heard it was really good.
All
and
this,
original.
it is really
It is.
original, and
Yeah.
it is very. It draws you in because the story and the mystery that you're brought along with in this character is sort of just very unpredictable. The story itself is unpredictable,
Yeah.
and it
But it
shouldn't
also
be.
feels real, like
Yes.
how something in this day and age, as much as I hate to say that, would take place. Because
Right.
this father that doesn't know how to, or thinks he knows his kid, is finding out, oh, I don't
Everything
know
about
as
them.
much as I thought I did, and here's all this stuff that is out there in the world about this, my
Yeah.
daughter.
Yeah, like you said, like he has to tap into her social media accounts, and he finds videos of her sort of
Mhm.
pouring out her soul in her isolation because I think the mother passed away from cancer or something like
Yeah,
that,
I think
right?
so.
Yeah, and we're spoiler alert. That's like 5 minutes within the movie we're told that happened. So then it's just a father-daughter relationship, which makes it even more heartbreaking for the dad to go through because this is like his whole world, and he loses it in a whim, and then it's. On the hunt, and he's got conviction.
And he has struggles like getting into some of her accounts, and he's
Yeah.
trying to reset passwords, and
He's calling her friends
Yeah.
based on social media.
Harold's the
connections.
dad.
Harold's the dad.
Yeah.
How old is this girl?
She's
high
16.
school.
Yeah.
Harold plays a father of a 16-year-old.
Yeah, he's like
Yeah,
45 in real life.
Really.
John Cho's at least in his 40s.
I keep
Yeah.
thinking when I think of John Cho, I think of the college guy. I forget how old that movie
From
is
Harold
based
and
about.
Kumar,
From Harold
yeah,
and
it's from
Kumar. It was like
2001, which is 19 years ago.
Oh shit, I'm old. Okay, that's how it is. I could be the
You
dad
could
of a
be
of a-
Harold.
of a fucking no, but I guess a 16-year-old technically.
Yeah, you could
That's
be.
insane. Wow.
This is a great movie, and it's a lot of fun to watch again because, there's a lot of plot twists, and they reward you for paying attention the first couple of watches and then watching it again and like catching Easter eggs that you didn't. There's thousands of Easter eggs in this movie.
So the whole movie does take place on a social media platform or on a
No,
computer?
various social media platform, or not even social media, various electronic platforms. There's like home security cameras that are tapped into for some of the scenes
Oh, that sounds cool.
that show some of the stuff. Some stuff is through cell phones, some stuff is through audio only, some stuff is through the computer screen.
Is it kind of like Unfriended, where it's all like just?
Yeah, no, it's not all like stationary camera to camera. It's mobile. Like he goes on hunts for his daughter in his car, and then you're sort of it turns to cell phone. Yeah, GoPro, various platforms of electronics, basically. And it's just well done and well put together.
It really is.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's Searching. And the other movie is Unsane, which is
I still want to see that one.
very similar to style-wise to Searching. Unsane is about a lady, and it's directed by Steven Soderbergh, and it's completely shot with an iPhone. Yeah. So this is Miguel, you've got equipment beyond what Soderbergh used here. So I know we can make some juicy movie here. But Unsane, the premise is mind-boggling. It's about a down-and-out sort of mid-30s-year-old lady who lives on her own. She's single, and she's going through some emotional issues. And her mom suggests that she just goes to speak to a therapist or someone to speak with. And she speaks with this therapist, and based on the conversation she has with them, they have her sign some paperwork, and she is locked in to a mental facility without any say-so. She's basically, from that point on, after the interview, closed in and contained. And there's this subplot going on with a stalker of hers from a previous relationship or whatever it was, and she keeps seeing this stalker in this confined mental hospital that she's been quarantined in without her say-so. And so there's just this added intensity there. She has conversations with the other folks who are in there, and this whole movie long, you're sort of on her side because you know that she's not completely nuts. But Soderbergh does such a masterful job of having the movie evolve into like, is she actually perhaps insane? And imagining all of this stalker stuff, and is all of this a product of her actual insanity? And this is just the right thing panning out, and the right process of events. So another very mentally stimulating film like Searching that takes an unorthodox approach to film and storytelling.
I'm a fan of Claire Foy, which is why
she's awesome.
Yeah,
and
she's the queen in The Crown, and she was in the Spiders.
Yeah, Girl in the Spider's
Yes.
Web. She took over the Noomi Rapace role there, and that's on my honorable mentions list.
Nice. Well, my turn?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't steal it this time.
Infinity War.
Yeah, no. My number 2 was Solo, a Star Wars story.
Oh,
Good choice. I support that.
I really thought it captured the same feel of the first 3 movies. I thought it did a really good job with.
You mean 4, 5, 6, right?
4, 5, and 6. Yeah, New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. I thought it kept the nice campy humor that we all love Star Wars for throughout it.
Yep.
I thought you had good acting in there. I loved the fact that Chewbacca, finally you get to see this 7-foot, 8-foot tall Bigfoot, for lack of a better comparison, throw his body weight around, rip the arms off of people. I loved that part of it.
Yes.
Plus, that was kind of a tilt your hat to the Lego Star Wars video game, if anybody ever played that.
Yep.
And there were a lot of stuff inside Drayden Voss's, I guess they call that a yacht, like the idol from the opening scenes of Raiders of the Lost Ark is in there. The Sankara stones from Temple of Doom are in there. The Holy Grail is actually in there. Armor that I don't. It's not necessarily Boba Fett's armor, but the same type of armor that Boba Fett and Jango Fett wear.
He's a collector.
Are in Drayden Voss's things. There's a lot of little hidden things into it. I liked, when the actor that played Donald Glover.
Yes, he played Lando Calrissian.
Oh, he
Yes.
did a great job with Lando. I
Yeah.
thought, they
Just in cape management alone.
yes, the capes were genius. The greeting when he called him Han instead of Han, that was a reference back to Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
At the end of the movie, when Han finds Lando again, and he acts like they're going to get into a fight or whatever, and then I'm just kidding. Well, that's the opposite of what happens in Empire Strikes Back. If you don't remember that, there was a lot of these things that connected back to the old movies that I thought they really did well. Now, I don't think you can talk about this movie without talking about the criticism it took, that they played it safe. I don't know what you expected for these guys to not play it safe. So, they got rid of Christopher Miller and Phil Lord. So these guys had done 21 Jump Street and Lego movies before.
They were on board.
I don't know why everyone has this thought that these guys would have done well with a gritty, dark, maverick movie.
Well, sir,
right?
this ties into that conversation we've had about all these comedy directors branching out and tackling more serious loads. Star Wars is heavier than Halloween, in my opinion, and the Joker stuff that Todd Phillips is doing, all that is dwarfed in comparison to Star Wars. Star Wars is like the prime real estate for a director, and Disney doesn't just approach anyone. So, yeah, I think I'm on board. I don't think those guys would have been able to handle this.
Well, and I think one of the biggest problems was your writer. Jonathan Kasdan, I think, is an old school writer. He wrote Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, Raiders of the Lost Ark. But he hadn't done a lot since the turn of the century, right? But I think he's old school. He wrote the script. He wants the script followed. And these guys wanted to do a little more improv, have a little more input from the actors. And I think that was the big problem, actually, with making of the film. And I just wish that it wasn't as public as it was, because I think all the stuff that came out about the changing of directors and all that stuff influenced every critic. Every critic who glowed about Force Awakens crapped on Han Solo, which just is amazing to me, because Han Solo is so much of a better movie than Force Awakens.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it also had a problem because it came out after Force Awakens and after The Last Jedi crap 6 months before it, and it didn't have a chance, I think, from get-go. I really wish people could kind of look at this movie, forget about what was said with it, just sit back with your Star Wars mind and watch it. I think you really enjoyed it. It's a really good movie.
I love Solo, and I think there were so many little Easter eggs and things that were smart tributes to things that we grew up with in the original trilogy and in the books too, like you said.
Yeah.
So no, I love Solo. I hated with a passion The Last Jedi, and
Me
I
too.
as somebody who I think we acknowledge so much of the lack of success that Solo didn't get was because people were pissed about The Last Jedi. It basically was collateral damage for the shit mill that was The Last Jedi. And it was just really unfair because...
I disagree a little with you guys on this, because I thought they did a good job of insinuating that this was another solo Star Wars story. I'm sorry, no pun intended. That this was a separate branch of Star Wars, and this was more of a roll on from Rogue One than it was from Last Jedi for me.
Well,
as far as
that's true too. It was an indie solo movie, no pun intended again, that was supposed to be like Rogue One, that was separate from the trilogy.
So I almost feel like the bad criticism is from the people that we already know are going to be shitty critics to begin with. And it's the same group of people that are going to...
I think the other movie's influence just because it's the same world.
Yeah.
And they get their big blockbuster. It's huge. They go in. They make tons of money in this thing.
Well, how many fanboys were still so mad? I'm not seeing the new Star Wars. That's how much I hated The Last Jedi.
Yeah,
I'm literally not.
If I do, it'll only be to shit on it.
Like I'm not going to see it at all.
Much, yeah.
My thing is they're not getting my money. Now, a lot of people will say, well, Miguel, that's hypocritical because you said that shouldn't have happened with Solo. The difference is that Solo wasn't a shit movie and it wasn't part of that shit trilogy they built. But what happened was a lot of fanboys were so mad about The Last Jedi, they did not go see Solo. And that was unfair because, like Sasha said, it's a movie that's separate from that trilogy.
Yeah.
And so people stayed home, and that's why it wasn't as commercially successful as it should have been. Now, the reason I'm not okay with people staying home for Solo is because it's independent from the new trilogy.
Yeah.
So they should have given it a chance.
Sure.
The new one, though, the reason I'm not seeing it is because it's part of that trilogy that I have such disdain for. So that one I think people should stay home for.
Yeah.
Solo was really misunderstood by the critics. The fans discovered it afterward. I was reading a thing on Reddit that talked about how it actually did pretty successful, surprisingly, on DVD and Blu-ray. But at the theater, it underwhelmed, and the studio was shocked. This is the first Star Wars movie to underwhelm ever.
Yeah, and I don't think enough can be said about Ron Howard coming in and and straightening that whatever it was out and getting the movie out.
This is that canon of films that Ron Howard was sort of destined to be a part of that he never really was. Like when you talk about Spielberg, Lucas, Zemeckis, they've all directed these trilogies that are giant iconic trilogies, and they all have that big huge name attached. Ron Howard, great director, all-time legend, but he's never had that big,
he's not a huge
that big shot.
He's not a big
chance.
budget movie.
Yeah,
guy.
not a big budget guy. And to see him flex his muscle here in the Star Wars realm was great. I'm so happy those two comedic guys did not get to run with this, even though I like their stuff.
I'm not saying it wouldn't have been interesting. I just don't think the situation was right for them in this situation.
Yeah. I'll say this about Solo. You could throw that on before New Hope, and it bleeds very well into New Hope.
Well, I think you could make another couple of movies along this line that happened prior to New Hope easily.
But it definitely adds a ton of context for New Hope.
Yeah, definitely.
For that group of characters and the backstory, and it does an admirable job of fitting into to the best Star Wars movies that there are.
And I think just one last thought, prequels I think are really hard to do because things have been alluded to in the movies you've already seen. And so when you're going back and making it, you already kind of know what's going to happen. I think sometimes that's tough to do right, I guess, without
just ask Ridley Scott.
People. Yeah.
No shit.
Right?
I mean, are we on yours?
Yeah, we're on my pick.
Is this number one?
I think
number
that's
two.
the most that
He started.
Morgan's talked in the whole podcast.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's because I keep stealing all his picks.
He loves Solo.
He does.
He's
love Solo.
passionate
I
about
remember,
Solo.
I know. I remember whenever it came out.
Don't shit on Solo, anyone.
Well,
We all liked it. None of us shit on it.
We did.
Funny story. Whenever I was in the training room first coming on to my job, I think The Force Awakens had just come out, and I swear we spent a good hour. Morgan did at least shitting on it the whole time.
You hated it. Let me ask you this real quick, if I may. Was The Force Awakens better or worse than The Last Jedi? What was the worst movie?
I think they're equally bad. But
No way.
No.
Force Awakens maybe isn't as bad as Last Jedi. I think what angered me so much about Force Awakens is you wait. I guess it hadn't been that long, 10 years, something like that. But you're coming back to that. You're no longer doing the prequels. Now you're building onto the story, and you do a freaking remake. How many more Death Stars can we freaking have? Oh, this one's different. It eats the sun. Well, what kind of effects does that have on the gravitation in that solar system? I mean, it's like it's stupid. The new Jedi just picks up a lightsaber and boom, a master. No training necessary.
I mean, maybe they'll
fucking
get to all
terrible.
of this in the new one, Morgan.
Midichlorians, don't you know?
Maybe they'll get to all of this in the new one. Maybe they got to it in the thousands of books that none of us have read at this table, included in the Star Wars lore. Yeah.
Right. I think the cartoons were better, Clone Wars cartoons. I didn't watch all of them, but when I was watching them, they were way better.
The hole that Star Wars has dug itself into is that it's trying to tie in everything that exists in the Star Wars realm back together. Like even the video games, The Force Unleashed has nods to all of this. Every facet of their...
I do like Battlefront. I'm a P1.
Well, even that, every facet of their sort of their outreach to the Star Wars realm has to tie back to the 4, 5, 6 trilogy in some way, shape, or form. Like everyone. And that's why Rogue One, I think, just blew the roof off the place. But even that has nods
directly
to
tied.
Darth Vader. Yeah. So, I mean... Yeah, it's tough to stay away from the criticism you have of The Force Awakens because it all ties back to 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
And that was our Star Wars talk. Anyways,
Last all night, really.
yeah, that can be Star Wars can be its own
Yeah.
separate thing.
Exactly.
But my number 2 pick has nothing to do with Star Wars. My number 2 pick is Annihilation.
Oh, that has everything to do with Star Wars. No,
No, not at all. Annihilation.
Oscar
Yeah,
Isaac and Natalie Portman.
and Natalie
yeah.
Portman.
It was also a piece of shit like Star Wars.
Oh,
Ding,
listen,
ding, ding, ding.
no, ma'am. Let me tell you about my experience.
Deep
with
dive this.
Annihilation.
Deep dive this for us.
Yes, please.
No, that's my
Number
number
two.
2. I'm on number 2.
Sell me on this because
Maggie?
I
Okay.
hated it.
Maggie, can you go on a Sasha monologue of
Listen,
Annihilation?
I'm so-
Because
yes.
this is a deep diveable
Okay.
movie. Go for it.
Okay, so I'm actually surprised that you didn't like it as much, just because it was the same director as Ex Machina, Alex Garland.
I know.
That's why
It's
Right?
it's that I haven't watched a movie whenever that came out. I haven't watched it I haven't thought about a movie in such depth as I did with that movie. I had dreams about it the day after, like whenever we saw it, like after we saw it. Yeah, I was having crazy ass dreams. I had
Elaborate.
it's that whole world, like you're
The Shimmer.
the shimmer, you're going into it and they don't know what to expect. Anybody that's gone in hasn't come out until Oscar Isaac's the husband of Natalie Portman comes out, and he is all kinds of jacked up. He's the only one to ever come out, and
Right.
even then he's not really saying much. And so she feels the need to go into that shimmer and find out what's affecting her husband. And then there's 3 other women that go in there: Jennifer Jason Leigh, Gina Rodriguez, and Tessa Thompson. And they all have 4 different specialties, and they're trying to navigate what's going on. And because the shimmer is expanding, and anything that goes into the shimmer doesn't come out. And they're wondering what is happening with the people that they're sending in, because by the time we get to Natalie Portman going into the shimmer, which I believe the shimmer is over the state of Florida.
Mhm.
So I mean, just over that in general, like you already have, swamp. There's a lot of questionable things in Florida just to begin with.
Yeah.
So
Right.
adding the shimmer on top of that, you kind of don't know what you're going to get. And it's
And the Shimmer, for context sake, is like a sort of an alien quarantine zone it is alien.
Yeah,
The
it's
human beings
definitely
have no
alien.
idea how it got there.
how it got there.
What's inside? It's
Yeah.
like a quarantine. It almost looks like, visually, it has like the resemblance of what a bubble looks like, a big
Yes.
giant bubble. The shimmer that a bubble gives off. It's actually pretty much a bubble.
Yeah, and it's I don't know. After I watched the movie, I tried to go find the book. I couldn't find the book anywhere in the DFW area, so I had to order it online. It's part of a 3-part trilogy
Yeah.
called the Southern Reach trilogy. No, I ordered it after the movie, because I heard that the book was different than the movie, and it was. It's definitely different. The book is only 250 pages, probably less than that, and it took me almost a month to get through it because
Oh wow.
it is different than the movie. But it was, if I would have read the book first, I probably wouldn't have watched the movie, to be honest. But this is one. It was just, I don't know.
So what's going on inside of the Shimmer? Once this team gets in there, they see the world evolving in front of them physically.
It's these like flowers. It's like the flowers, 2 different flowers morph into coming its own species, and it's just like combining these different
Animals as well.
organisms, animals, anything that is breathing and living, it has life, is being combined into something else, creating its
Mutated,
own,
almost.
mutated, like creating its own organism. And that to me is super fascinating because it's
what happens inside of us from generation to generation.
I wish I would have watched it beforehand, before the podcast, because it's super complicated. It's not
Yeah.
like super complicated, but it does
There's definitely
It's got
layers.
depth.
sure.
There's
Yep.
definitely a lot of layers, and
The ending, the last 25
oh my
minutes.
god,
That's what killed it for me.
Crazy.
Oh.
hated the ending.
I loved the ending.
I was totally on board throughout the entire movie, and then she finally gets to the center or whatever.
Yes.
And I fucking hated it from there.
Okay.
I think a lot of good movies have that. Well, a lot of movies have that problem. They have a really good story. You get to the end and they just can't end it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, in the novel, it's kind of the same. But the novel ends like basically the novel's written as a diary, and she's just like updating you on what's going on. So the story is not completely cohesive because they're also taking these pills that are supposed to help them stay coherent whenever they're in the shimmer. It's supposed to help them sleep and all that stuff as well. And in the novel, it's creating memory loss, and whenever they're sleeping, like 8 hours turns into several days, and so they don't have a grasp on.
Well, there's no time. Yeah, there is no time in the shimmer.
Yeah.
It's a bubble. It's a whole different world.
It is a very whole different world. And at first, like it's pretty, and there's all this stuff going on.
There's a lot of beauty there.
There's a lot of beauty, but then like that beauty is like terrorizing too, because you also have these other mutations that are coming in, and they're big, like the bear.
Yes, the bear monster that attacks.
Alligator.
Yeah, the
like,
alligator. I think that's what I like so much about the movie, is that it marries the beauty of the world changing and the introduction of the shimmer, and then it introduces the terror to it. And there's the Oscar Isaac army scenes with his group of guys where she's replaying videos and they're showing the morphing actually on a like skeletal level within the guts of some of the guys. I think this is one of those movies that if we just give it a little bit of time, maybe like 5 to 10 years, and we revisit it after that, when the world around us has changed to a point where we get more resonation from this movie, I think we'll appreciate it more. It's one of those movies that, if you can tackle the multiple layers and you're willing to sort of be challenged by a movie to dig deeper than the surface level, you can get a lot from it right now. But it's one of those movies that I'm so anxious to see how it evolves over time. Like his other film, Ex Machina, I just can't wait to talk about Ex Machina in 20 years, because I can already talk about it for hours. So I can only imagine in 2030 what I'm going to think of Ex Machina when everybody's basically a fucking robot that has been hand guided because of this social media data aggregation system that is happening in front of our very eyes that we don't give a shit about standing up against.
Yeah. Well, and something else that I thought was really interesting too is, the bear scene, the alligator scene, kind of made it have like that thriller aspect of it.
Even horror.
Keep it, horror aspect to kind of keep it going. But I don't really think that they needed that. I think that was more for the audience, just to kind of help, I guess,
diversify
give it a little bit more energy.
The slow burn of it.
Yeah, the characters, the 4 women that you follow in this journey, I think it's the first all women team too that go into this, because I think before it was all male.
And there was Ghostbusters.
Yeah. No, it was. I think all 4 characters were really cool, and I can't say too much. I don't want to give anything away. But never mind. I'm not going to say anything.
They all have different experiences because they're all different women, and the shimmer interacts with them on different levels, and we get to see it all. And you can even dig deeper into that if you want to, and it gets very interesting.
Yeah, there's one character in particular, and I'm not gonna say which one, but just the way her story develops, it's. I know. We're almost reaching the time.
Which one are you talking about? No, you can say it in the mic.
No,
Tessa Thompson's character?
I'm going to delete that because I didn't want to give away the character.
Oh, okay.
I'm just...
Well, I mean, it's just a 2-year-old movie. I mean...
Yeah.
Yeah, but we've had other movies that we didn't give away the ending to.
That's true.
So...
Okay.
I'm going to bleep out
the name.
Edit
that out.
Yeah, I'm going to bleep out the name.
Valkyrie's character?
No. I mean, her story is basically suicide.
Yes.
And just the whole.
Would you argue that all of them are kind of on a suicide mission? I mean, they don't know what the fuck is going to happen in the Shimmer. So they all, to an extent, believe that they're going to die.
They're not all coming in with her background.
Right. Where
and
she's suicidal to begin with, kind
yes.
of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that just plays into all of these women have very unique personalities, and the Shimmer is sort of like in Hellraiser, the Cenobites are like, we're going to torture you with all your fears. The Shimmer kind of turns into that if you want it to, but I had a very optimistic view of it all, and I can see how some people call this like a really scary movie for them, and some people think it's a very beautiful movie. Some people think it's a sci-fi thriller. There's
or
different.
Some people think it's trash, like
yeah, or some people think it's just terrible, and they're all valid opinions because there's a little bit of it of all of them.
Yeah, I think anybody, you really can't. You can't tell any one person, because I think that as far as suggesting movies, I'm not going to suggest as every person that I see, because I think every person would get something different out of it for sure. And I really can't say that with like Incredibles 2. I would tell everybody to go see Incredibles 2, but I'm not going to tell everybody to go see Annihilation. That's almost like, recommending Melancholia to everybody. Like, I'm not going to do it.
The word itself and the title itself, it was intriguing to me to see what that movie was plot wise and structure wise with the title Annihilation, because you're forced to respect a movie title for what it's called, right? And Annihilation means the end of the complete evisceration of what, and then this movie introduces what it is that it's eviscerating. It happens to be humanity, I guess, to some degree.
Yeah, I don't know. That's why it's my number 2. I fucking loved this movie.
Thanos could have solved all this.
All right, Miguel, what's your number 1 2018 pick?
With certainty, it's easy to pick. Bohemian Rhapsody. Really? Yes, it was.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interject.
No.
Even with the inaccuracy it's had with.
Because I mean, if he's a Queen fan, as I was watching, I picked up on the inaccuracies easily. How they met Freddie, the circumstances.
Haven't seen it yet.
Oh God, damn it!
So good.
It's so good. So even with the inaccuracies, as I'm sitting there watching it, because I know that their story, I've been obsessed with Queen since I was a little kid. I'm sitting there going, "It's okay, I get it," because this is more thematic and it doesn't interfere with the overall story that's important. So yeah, even with the inaccuracies, I still love the movie. When I first heard that he was casted as Freddie Mercury,
he was so good. Rami Malek.
God, I loved him for Mr. Robot. When I heard it was casted as Freddie, I was just like, I don't know how I feel about this. And then I started watching the trailers, and by the end of the movie, I was like, I'm so glad he took this role.
Yes.
The rest of the casting was amazing. That looks like Brian May's son.
Yeah.
It looks like him.
Right, it does.
I mean, the casting was amazing. It looks like Roger Taylor. It looks like Brian May. It looks like all of them. And they nailed it so well. The story was perfect. I think the narrative had perfect timing. The pacing was good. There's just so many few things that I can find a bitch about this movie. I think it stuck the landing. The critics, what really pissed me off about this movie is that when it first came out, again, fuck Rotten Tomatoes. The critics at first weren't crazy about the movie. I think it was around 50-60%. And then whenever certain critics started to say this is an Oscar-nominated movie, critics started coming out and saying, "Oh, we change our opinion. Rami Malek's amazing." I was like, "No, motherfuckers. You should have had it right the first time. The audience score had it right the first time, and now you're changing your mind." So yeah, it was earlier on misunderstood by the critics, and then they conceded that it was a better movie. The Oscars, recognized what kind of an awesome movie it was, and I loved it. I mean, it was easily my favorite choice of the year. We talked about, so 2018 was not as good as 2016 and 17 when it comes to movies, but I think it finished strong. And again, Bohemian Rhapsody did not disappoint. Every time it comes on, I'm going to watch it. One of my favorite movies of the decade, easily the favorite movie of the year.
Do you like the trend of these biopics with rock bands or famous musical celebrities? We've gotten the Rocket Man, we've gotten Elton John, we've gotten Queen. Are we going to get?
We're going to get.
What
Led
else
Zeppelin.
are we going to get?
We're going to get Led Zeppelin. We're going to get Metallica.
They've talked about Bowie, but they're not licensing any of his music to be able to use it in the movie, which makes no sense to me.
Is this like a new gold mine for Hollywood?
It really is. But you know what? It's okay because it's something we've been waiting for a while. As creatively bankrupt as Hollywood is, and they keep recycling the same things. At least they're telling,
Straight Outta Compton earlier in this decade as well.
At least now they're telling stories that I think a lot of us have been waiting for a while. We've been waiting for the Queen movie. I've been waiting for 20 years.
Where do you draw the line on stuff you've been waiting for, though, versus like shit that they're just peddling out because there's a fan base that will suck it up? Like, do we all need an ABBA movie?
We don't need an ABBA movie, but it might be coming. I think that let's be honest.
I love ABBA's music. I don't need to see 3 Swedish girls and 2 guys, like how they all got together. Or was it 2 Swedish girls?
I don't know. I just know there's a couple of their songs from that horrible movie. No offense, Sasha.
Mamma Mia. I love ABBA.
I know my folks loved ABBA growing up too. There's a couple songs of them that I like. Again, just like you, I don't need to see.
I don't need to see a movie. I feel like if this trend continues, there'll be a lot of that.
There is. It's coming.
They're not that much different than like superhero origin stories. Honestly, how these band members come together and how that's all it is. It's just an origin story for the most part.
They really are. How they came to be these legends is what it really is. Right. Yeah, but it's okay because it's real life.
Almost any big musical act like that, you could create a story from it.
Absolutely could.
I get why some of them, the icons, it's necessary for, but I do have a little bit of a beef with the extension of celebrity and fame, sort of continuing on past celebrities' prime. Let me explain it a little bit. If you come up with a generational celebrity who's a big name, you're sort of introduced to them and their rise to fame, and you become a fan of theirs.
Yeah.
But the system is to sort of incubate that fame for the tenure of your life, so that even when you're in your 30s and 40s and this person's no longer in the prime of their career, then they spit out the movies and the biopics, the novels, the memoirs that make you cling to the feeling that you had of that person. I have a hard time saying that that's terrible, but it indebts you. It sort of indentures the fan to that person's life for the entire fan's life, and it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I don't know how to phrase this. It's leechy. It's
sure.
It's like they won't go away.
Yes.
Like
they don't.
They have their time. They kind of need to go. It doesn't. Bohemian Rhapsody doesn't
Bowie
fall
fan.
into this, right?
Do you know everything about David Bowie?
No. I know a lot, but I'm sure there are things I don't know.
It's subjective because there's
69 years old. There's no way for me to know everything that happened in his lifetime.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think though some of the interesting stuff for us would actually be 60s, 70s, early 80s, not anything past that.
Right.
So
that's stuff that we weren't a part of. Yeah.
Well, it's really subjective. There's people who are comfortable with that sort of, dare I say, worship. There's people that are comfortable. I don't think it's healthy to worship anyone or anything, including, as much as I love Queen and Freddie Mercury, I don't worship Queen and Freddie Mercury. I'll jokingly say that. I don't literally worship them. Right. But there's people who do, who worship Elvis. Like there's people who especially in Texas, we've met those people. You walk into their fucking house and they have shrines and everything of Elvis. That's unhealthy.
Yes.
So I think that, again, I shit on Hollywood for being creatively bankrupt. This is something that I'm not going to shit on them for because you know what? They're interesting stories that I think
they are, and they're icons, like you said. I mean, Queen and
Bowie.
Yeah, and we'll probably get a Prince movie. We'll get a Michael Jackson movie eventually.
Oh God, please no Michael Jackson.
Right?
It is.
It will be the messiest fucking story.
We'll get a George Michael movie. All of these are in the pipeline, and I'm halfway between like whether they're needed or not.
They're not needed. They're wanted.
Then why are we spending, or why is Hollywood spending hundreds of millions of dollars on them? Well, like think about the amount of money wasted in just every tier of filmmaking. You've got studios like The Asylum that shit out these trashy horror movies just because there's an audience of 5,000 people willing to buy them. But at the end of the day, there's millions of dollars being wasted on movies that don't need to be made. And we'll never get, I'm not trying to put us in like an elitist point of view where, oh, we wouldn't watch these movies, so they don't need to exist. But I'm trying to say, like, these movies legitimately don't need to exist. They're like worthless jobs that don't need to exist.
It's all subjective, because it's like, if that's the case, where do we draw the line? People could say that the Marvel movies don't need to exist because we could
I do.
comic
People
books
can say
I
that.
do.
about
Plenty of
anything.
people
The
do.
Marvel movies have
Yeah.
a return on them. I'm talking
These
about
could too.
movies. Well, I'm talking about Asylum movies
Yeah.
specifically.
But is that your gauge for a good movie, whether it's profitable? That doesn't necessarily have to mean
No,
anything.
the story has to have some merit to it as well. And this particular studio that I'm talking about is like the straight to sci-fi channel
Right.
We
studio.
could flip that and say that, okay, these stories are important legacy stories of Freddy. Why do the Asylum movies need to exist? They're trash.
Yeah.
So it's all subjective what the movie needs to exist or not. So if it's a fiction, it's not even fiction, we're talking about biopics. You could argue that either way. You could say these movies are fiction and they're trash, they're Dollar Tree movies, they don't need to exist. This movie right here is an art house movie about a biopic and a lifetime story that needs to be told. This needs to exist. So it's all subjective.
Yeah.
It's all subjective at the end of the day, what needs to exist and what doesn't. Because you can argue about anything.
Is the amount of money being put into the movies subjective though? Like is putting $50 million into 5 Sharknado movies subjective? That's a waste of $50 million.
Yeah.
It's subjective
Well-
too, because I mean, think about it, we
Who has Sharknado benefited?
Well, as a B movie fan, I appreciate
A lot of people actually like them.
the people
the bad
people
movies that come out.
like
I-
trash. There's people.
Yeah.
There's people out there to enjoy that trash, and there's people that are making money out of it. We shit on Sharknado.
Mhm.
The reason there's 3 or 4 of those goddamn
'Cause they made
movies is
money.
because
Yeah.
they made money.
Yeah.
Like in the 3-headed shark thing, there's more than one of those movies, right?
Yeah, it's like 2-headed, 3-headed, 5-headed, 6-headed.
Which means
It's
that
insane.
trash is
Yes.
making. It's like cotton candy. It's $50 million cotton candy. It doesn't need to exist. Someone's enjoying the fuck out of it, so it's going to sell.
But on the flip side, like that making that movie, there's people with jobs making that movie.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like so if they were making that, would they
They're
necessarily
like-
be? They're not going to be on a Hollywood blockbuster
Right.
if they're making these shitty movies.
Well, that's the deeper, darker sort of discussion is like, are these people just cranking out stuff that is meaningless because their
They could be.
livelihoods on the line and putting it? Yeah,
it's totally possible.
yeah.
And that's a great segue into Heather's 20.
It is. It is.
Mega
And
Shark 6.
Mega Shark 6. Yes. Brought to you by Bohemian Rhapsody, which was my number one as well.
Nice.
Thank you.
Oh,
Great
here's where we
minds.
really
So,
differed.
is this our first time we agreed on?
I think
top
so. Yeah. I really, really enjoyed this movie. And again, I know there were some creative liberties taken with it, and the story is not exactly accurate, but I had a blast in this movie.
3? I did
And
too.
every musical performance, I wanted to cheer and clap, when it was done, and the whole Live Aid recreation.
Yeah,
I thought
watching
was
it at the theater.
amazing. Yeah. And
Fuck, it was amazing.
and I know I had seen footage from Live Aid, but I hadn't actually watched all of it. And if you watch it side by side, it is dead on. And like just his mannerisms and expressions, and I mean, he is Freddie Mercury in this movie, and I was really impressed with all of it, honestly.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Bryan Singer for a multitude of reasons,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not going to bullshit and say he didn't stick the landing with this. I think he did an
Did
amazing job.
Bryan Singer direct this?
Bryan Singer directed, if you
What?
can believe it. The guy who fucked up Rogue and X-Men basically killed it with Freddie Mercury.
The guy who's
Yeah.
got a lot of sketchiness to him as well.
Yeah, from what we found out over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
It's 2018 Oscar-winning movie,
Wow.
Yeah.
Best Picture,
Well, did it win Best Picture? Sure did,
Yeah.
didn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Fuck yeah, it did.
and Rami Malek won Best
it
Actor.
should not
Yeah.
have won Best Picture. But
What
yeah.
should have, Morgan?
Not
We'll talk about it in a minute.
We'll get
I
there.
say Chips. That didn't come out that year. No.
But-
No,
Well, my movie's not
Meg.
winning any awards, but it was
For
the most.
prefacing it that
It was
way.
the most fun I had in 2018. It's Upgrade with
Yes. So my honorable mentions.
Logan Marshall Green, who's made appearances with Prometheus and The Invitation, and this is his first sort of leading role. This is a hodgepodge of movies directed by Lee Winnell, who is famous for being the second guy in the Saw room.
That guy.
Yeah, and he wrote the Saw series, and I've been a fan of his since that writing. And this was not his first movie, but his first like deviant from the horror genre.
Is this is the gentleman an upgrade from The Invitation?
Yes, Logan Marshall Green,
the guy, the ex-husband.
Yeah, the husband.
Okay, the main guy.
Yep.
He's so underrated as an actor.
Yeah, people refer to him as Tom Hardy light or
poor man
Tom Hardy.
When I
but
started seeing the trailers for Upgrade, I thought it was.
You thought it was Tom Hardy?
I did,
okay.
yeah. But I really like this movie.
This movie takes on it's like a mix of RoboCop and Frankenstein. That's probably the best way I can explain it. Takes place not too far in the future, and some bad stuff happens to this guy that I won't spoil, and he is synthetically and cybernetically enhanced with an AI that controls his limbs only. So his arms and his legs are AI controlled, and at first this is great because he's fully rejuvenated from an accident that he had. But the AI kicks into, starts speaking to him in very colloquial conversations, sort of like that voice in the back of your head that everyone has. The AI takes that position in this movie and starts posing some ethical questions to him as the film continues. And so half of this movie is very just like balls to the wall action and sci-fi, and the other half is thought-provoking in if you want it to be, because this AI slowly takes over this the power of this decision making that this man had at one point. And I don't want to spoil the end, but it all ties back to that question of like, are we letting our humanity sort of be whittled away by computers and artificial intelligence? Some of us maybe, and some of us are willing to take a stand for like the real world and what's still out there in the natural world. And this movie tackled that head on, probably as good as Ex Machina did, but in a different way. In a more action-oriented and sci-fi thriller kind of way.
And there's that scene where, like, when he first kind of is letting the AI take over, and you know, it's a fight scene, and I forget exactly what he's supposed to do, and he's like, I don't know how to do that, and the AI goes, well, I do.
I've got this covered.
Yeah, I can do this. You know, let me take control, essentially.
Yeah, it's like a physical version of when Neo plugs himself into the Matrix and learns Kung Fu and all of these other things. The AI speedily increases all of his physical abilities, but then very quickly the AI wants control over decision making and graduates from what has already been coded into it to dominate, and it wants more and more and more and more. And that's a real thing. Like, again, I don't remember when this movie takes place exactly. I want to say it's 2020s, some point in 2020, that decade, and we're not far removed from that. I mean, you got guys like Elon Musk on giant stages who are calling people basically cyborgs because they walk around with their phones as extensions of themselves. And by dictionary definition, yeah, if you think your electronic device is a direct extension of who you are, then you're sort of a cyborg, or at least on the track to becoming one. So yeah, it poses a lot of existential questions about how allowing we are of technology to sort of take a grasp over what we've had a grasp of for tens of thousands of years, which is the human condition. And out of the blue in the last 15, 20 years, we've sort of taken a back seat and said, let's see how this goes. And it gets out of control pretty quick. And this movie does a great job of painting that portrait.
Yep.
Upgrade. Cool. I wrote that down.
It was okay.
Well, here, okay, this is important.
I might have to go back and revisit that one again, but it didn't strike me in the
Did you
same
see
way.
It before I did, like
it was probably on HBO or one of the 50 movie channels I have.
Well, this is important. There is an age difference here
because he was talked into it, right?
No,
into getting the
he was
implants.
saved.
Yeah, but
from an accident,
that
from a
wasn't
car accident.
Right, that was not really an accident, right?
Well, that's fast forward.
Yeah.
All of I don't want to spoil it because it deserves no. Because there's people at this table that I don't want it spoiled for.
Right.
I don't give a shit about the people listening as far as the spoilers.
Thanks.
No.
Hi,
As far as
listeners.
this,
He didn't mean it, guys.
just as far as the spoilers are concerned,
What a jerk.
a lot of people have seen Upgrade, but the fact that my buddy Miguel hasn't, I want him to experience it.
Okay. Yeah. All right. My number one 2018 was Black Klansman. I thought it was clearly
Saw this one coming.
the best picture of the year. I think too many people got wrapped up in Bohemian Rhapsody and the songs, honestly. But anyway, Spike Lee robbed again. So the story of Colorado Springs cop. He happens to be, I think, the first black detective in Colorado Springs. That's I can't remember his name right off the top of my head.
This is the Adam Driver character?
Adam Driver's not black.
Yeah, that's right. He's not black.
This is John David Washington, Denzel's
son.
kid. And so, he has to try to fit in. But one of the first things he kind of gets tasked with is trying to, ferret out some of these Klansmen who are, semi-violent. So he's on the phone with David Duke. Those conversations are hilarious as he is playing a white guy, and Adam Driver is the guy who's showing up at the Klan meetings, who is getting infiltrated. He's also a cop, going undercover. But all the phone conversations are happening with John David Washington's character with David Duke as they get into going undercover with the Klan, and Driver is, they think he is Jewish his character is Jewish in the movie, and they kind of sniff that out a little bit. Some of the Klansmen do. They're all skeptical of him getting in there. But it is based on true life events. I mean, it's got some really funny scenes in it whenever David Duke he's coming to Colorado, and he's being assigned a policeman because people are threatening David Duke. They assign John David Washington's black character to watch him, which is really funny as they're at a Klan's meeting with the black officer in the room. And I thought Spike Lee did a great job with another real life story. Told it very well. It's shot very well. It's well acted. I was a little disappointed it didn't win, but a great movie.
Those movies with like undercover sort of elements to them, they're always interesting. They're far and few in between. I was trying to remember another really standout undercover movie, and the one that comes to mind is In Too Deep with LL Cool J and Omar Epps, but that's way back.
I thought you were going Deep Cover.
Well, that's even further back. That's with Lawrence Fishburne. Yeah. And that just goes to show you, like, maybe there's room for some better undercover movies to come out based on true events, because I'm sure there's tons of disclosure stuff that we can start tapping into. And much like the music biopics, I'd like to hear a lot about that kind of stuff, infiltration of, organizations, from governmental agencies, and just like taking a look at that sort of thing, especially in the digital age. Like, you get the Ed Snowden stuff, but that's sort of like whistleblower conversations. I want to hear the frontline stories of people that were sent into, I'm sure we have them, from like Al Qaeda to infiltrating. Well, yeah, that's old school though, right? I want to hear modern. I think
modern
we're ready.
Stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I like that 70s era a little bit, because I think a lot of people forget how much turmoil was really going on with everyone. Like, you're talking about you're talking about terrorists, within the United States terrorizing each other.
Yeah.
And
and there's a lot of
fabrication.
A lot more leeway, I think, in the 70s, like being in the government. So,
David Duke was a part of the Louisiana state government. Even in the 80s and early 90s, when was he making a run for president? He was trying to make a run in that.
Early 80s.
It might have been late 80s, early 90s. I feel like I
Really?
was. I'd have to look that up.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, and even today, the guy still is around and has influence on people. It's amazing. But,
Duke.
yeah.
Yeah, that fucker's still alive.
Yeah.
Still got influence.
All right, Maggie, end it.
All right, well, I'm going to end on a high note here, and my number one pick was Hereditary with Toni Collette.
The uplifting movie of the year.
Oh yeah,
Melancholia started off your decade
listen,
in this direction.
I told you guys I love depressing fucking movies. Like I love the shit out of them. Hereditary had probably the best performance. I'm sorry, Rami Malek was great, but Toni Collette bringing what she did in Hereditary and not getting any sort of recognition by the Academy is an absolute travesty.
It's a knock on horror movies and just the disassociation that awards have with the horror genre is kind of disgusting.
Yeah, it's really sad. Like there's so much. It's her acting in that movie was so good that there was moments where you were so uncomfortable. And it feels like you were a fly on the wall watching this family interact around like this tragedy that happens to them and how they deal with it. And you're uncomfortable. You feel bad for her, but then you're absolutely scared and terrorized, from her. And it's an uncomfortable movie almost throughout the whole thing. You're uncomfortable. And the last 15 minutes, like you don't know what the fuck's going on. And it's A24 movie, so it just has that element that, A24 horror movies, the last 10-15 minutes, you don't know what you're going to get. And it was so interesting and again, brilliantly acted. Totally like Toni Collette. I don't feel like she gets enough recognition at all.
Did you watch The United States of Terror?
I saw like the first season, but I didn't watch the whole thing. But that's another one. Like
she's so good in that.
She was so good, and it's really sad. Like
for me, Little Miss Sunshine, I really like.
Hereditary scary as fuck.
Yeah, haven't seen it.
Oh my
on
god!
On a fundamental level, Hereditary is scary.
It is. It was. It's one of those things where there was just.
Do we know what our grandparents were into? The kind of crazy shit they were into? We don't really. Mm-hmm. We don't have those conversations with previous generations as to what was their left field. What was their fucking like?
I don't know.
What was their extreme?
Suspiria. The original Suspiria was probably their like epitome of a scary movie.
Oh, I'm not. Yeah, not even on that level. On a personal level, because the title again. This is a movie where the title is pretty important. Yeah. Hereditary, and this is a curse that Toni Collette and her family have to navigate because they
can't outrun it.
It's part of the family tree.
Yes.
So incorporate that into like real life, and there's not to the extreme where you got things crawling on the fucking walls and stuff like that. But there are things that you can't, unless you confront them and you address them. There are things that are part of who you are that are there because they're genetically present, and they're part of your DNA code.
You can't get rid of it.
You can't. Well, you can confront them.
Right.
And you can move on from them, and you can tackle that, and that's kind of where this movie goes. There's
so much grief and pain and anger, and it's all mostly from Toni Collette's character. And it's not your scary movie where they have jump scares. This is all like all these fears play on your emotions and your feelings, and a lot of it, like you think it's irrational, but unless you're put in that situation, you don't know what's irrational.
Yeah, right.
And it's just it's a beautiful film. The guy that directed it, R.A. Aster, he also just did Midsummer,
another
which came out
beautiful
this year.
film.
We disagree. on that. It is a very beautiful film. I didn't like it as much as I do Hereditary. I feel that was it's such a good movie.
I agree. I
And-
said the same thing walking out of Midsommar. I said I didn't like it as much as Hereditary, but I don't know if I've seen Hereditary twice and I've only seen the other one once. So I don't know. Maybe it'll grow on us.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if I'm sure if I watch Midsommar, it's again it has aspects that I appreciate, but Hereditary as a whole, it there's just different nuances in there that just pay off. Like she makes this the little girl that's in the movie, she makes like this clicking noise with her mouth.
Oh gosh.
And that noise right
thanks
there.
for recreating it.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
That's gonna haunt you in your dreams. And just little stuff that happens, and all of it just pays off. Like there is no scene wasted, and I really appreciate that in movies, because I hate movies that you have a scene and it seems like it's very specific, and there's something else that's supposed to go along with it, and it doesn't lead up to anything. Everything in this movie is very specific, and it all pays off, and I can just go on about it. But that's my number one pick, Hereditary.
I'm so surprised by it.
I know, because I don't like horror movies, but
Yeah.
it's
This is
psychological horror.
It's a slow burn too, to be fair.
It is.
Yeah, there's a lot of family drama. If you're pie charting this as a movie, it's like 85% family drama, 10% supernatural horror, and 5% like
What the fuck is going on?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's a good day. It was his debut, right? Ari
It was
Lester?
his director. Yeah, he's done a lot of. Before this, he's done a lot of short film, like a lot of short movies. But this was his first feature film.
Nice.
So very, very strong debut.
Okay. Yeah. So what were your honorable mentions, Miss Hello?
So I almost put these two as my number 3 choice, kind of as a tie, but it's a couple of documentaries that I just really enjoyed this year. The first one is "Won't You Be My Neighbor," the Mr. Rogers documentary. I didn't watch Mr. Rogers a whole lot as a kid, but you kind of just always knew who he was. And it was nice to see that he actually was the man that he portrayed himself to be.
Unlike Pee Wee Herman.
Right? Yeah. But he wanted everybody to...
Actually, if you go back and look, I think he is the guy he's portraying
Pretty much,
himself
yeah.
to
He was a
be.
creepy guy.
Yeah.
Bless his
Sorry.
heart.
No, all good. But he just kind of wanted everyone to love and accept everybody, regardless of
Yeah.
ability, disability, race, gender, whatever. And he's just this kind of wholesome soul that you kind of get this little peek into his world. And I don't know, I thought it was a really beautiful movie.
Yeah, it is rare. I'm trying to think of another figure that turned out to be the person they portrayed themselves to be, and it's really hard to find.
Well, I think it's kind of funny
Like with
because
fucking,
Tom Hanks is one that I would put on that list, and he's actually
gonna
going to be
play him,
he's
yeah.
Mr.
gonna play
Rogers.
Mr. Rogers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I'm really okay with that, because like Tom Hanks, like he collects typewriters, and he wrote a book of short stories all about typewriters. I mean, that's
Wait,
like
what the
that,
fuck?
yes,
Really?
Yeah.
and it was so good. But like that's what makes him excited, And so I kind of think he's the perfect casting to play Fred Rogers.
Very interesting. I
So-
did not know that about Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
That's one of the most weirdest random.
It is random,
That's
but
cool as
it's
shit.
kind of endearing, because you're like, oh, he collects typewriters, I don't know.
That's cool.
But the other one is Three Identical Strangers.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, that's the one that Sasha has seen.
Is that the one with like the guys that look like brothers?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, they
so-
don't look like brothers.
They are. So essentially, this guy starts college, and he's walking around campus, and everyone's like, "Hey, so and so," and he's like, "Hi, I don't know you, but hi." And so it turns out that there was a guy at this college that looks just like him, and he had taken the semester off, so nobody was expecting him to be there. And as soon as this guy sees him, he grabs him. He's like, "We got to go find him. He lives like an hour away. You've got to meet him." And he opens the front door, and he's like, "I'm staring at myself. This is crazy." So they start talking, and the news picks it up and runs with it. These two brothers are reunited. They didn't even know the other one existed. And a third guy sees it, and he goes, "They look just like me."
Oh,
Yeah.
I've heard of that.
Yeah. So then, so they all connect, and it turns out they're triplets, and they were separated
Oh,
as part
wow.
of this kind of experiment when they were babies.
Experiment.
Yeah.
A scientific study
Yeah. A scientific study.
to see different class.
Basically, it's kind of a nature versus nurture thing, essentially, is what they're going for. So they have like, one is a wealthy family, one is a poor family.
What?
One is kind of middle
This
class.
is
This is
legit, bro.
real?
This is legit.
Legit. And
Who the
it's,
fuck did this? Who sanctioned
I don't know,
this?
but they live in beautiful houses and have pictures with the presidents of
Yeah,
the United
yeah.
States. And they were just assistants to the doctors.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's just a wild ride. Like, you don't know where this thing is going. And it's a true story. And you find out about kind of things the way they found out about it. And it's a crazy story.
Definitely worth checking out.
Yes, for sure.
On my honorable mentions as well. You should. It is. It's like a real life Black Mirror mixed with unsolved mysteries sort of vibe.
This is
Three Identical
insane.
Strangers.
Like who the hell did this experiment? Was it a university?
Bored ass scientists that want to test stuff out to get some semblance of how things work.
Twins.
Yeah. Basically.
Is that a Danny DeVito
Schwarzenegger
It's a great
movie?
I love it.
Twins separated at birth.
Yep.
One given everything, one given nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I guess so.
Yeah, when you're given everything, you look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. You're getting his muscles too. That's
Yeah.
I don't want to spoil too much. Which one of them ended up killing themselves?
Wait, what?
I don't remember.
Was it okay?
That happened too?
Yes.
Was that after the movie?
No.
Oh well, no. It was before the documentary.
The documentary
Yeah,
takes place after
The
everything's
documentary
happened.
takes place like
2018.
now.
It's just a bunch of
They're
people
talking
sitting
to him, yeah. And one of them is recounting the story, and they talk about like how their mannerisms are the same, and the way that they sit or the way they smoke, or like all these things are identical, and they hadn't met each other until like a year prior. And it's just crazy. And they had people coming to their house to run all these tests on them, which they didn't know. They thought it was just part of the adoption process. The families didn't know that they were triplets. That the adoptive families didn't have any idea.
It was a monitored almost. It was a long-standing social experiment and
so
study.
all of
So
their
they were
childhoods-
controlled and observed.
Truman Show almost
It
Yes.
is, but it's real and it's crazy.
And it mind boggles you and makes you wonder what the hell else kind of things could be done by people in the 70s, 60s.
It was
Wealthy
a
scientists.
MK Ultra
religious organization.
Yeah, I think so.
The orphanage that they were part
Yes, and the scene that scars me and that I remember as a standout from that film is the filmmakers meet one of the doctor's assistants, who's now an elderly 80-year-old lady, and she gives them a tour of her house, and she's got pictures with Barack Obama, she's got pictures with George Bush, she's got pictures with notable, huge people.
It's like some
and
Illuminati
you're like,
shit,
yes,
for real.
Yes, and that isn't addressed in this documentary because that's not really what it's about. It's more about these kids' stories.
But this is someone that's in
a position of influence, and she, according to her, was just a fucking assistant to the guys responsible for this. So either it's all like hush hush, and this is how we keep this person from saying too much, is give them all this wealth and this elite state, or she was more in on
like
it.
A set of twins that kind of a similar scenario happened to that they talked to.
Yes. And I didn't want to spoil the suicide thing, but it very early on, it's made evident that something happened to one of these third brothers because he's just not talking.
Well,
like,
you only see two of them.
Yeah, you only see two of them, and you don't see a third one. So you're like, oh, fuck, this is going to get dark real quick.
Which, if you're interested in Three Identical Strangers, it is on Hulu. I just found it.
Yeah, so check the shit out of that.
It's really worth watching, and it is really one of those that you're like, you have no idea what's going to happen next because it's just a crazy story.
I can't wait. We'll probably watch it Sunday.
Yeah. So all the stuff that hasn't been talked about is what I'll cover. Hotel Artemis is on my list. This is a sleeper gem for me because I love dystopian movies. I love quarantine sort of central environment movies. This all takes place in like a makeshift hotel / hospital that is in like 2025 LA, and there's this cool like shortage of water going on, and it's basically as if it got mislabeled as like an extension of the John Wick universe frequently, and a lot of people thought this was like the Intercontinental story and a deeper dive into what that would be like, but it's not. It does delve into the world of assassins and like these groups of people that all meet under this roof, and then they're supposed to act civil, and there's all these rules within the hotel. So it does come off like the John Wick Intercontinental storyline. But once you dig into it a little bit deeper, it's more than that. Jodie Foster made a return to movies in this role, and she's like the head doctor at this hotel, and Jeff Goldblum is standout as the bad guy, and minor roles. I always forget his name. This is the guy who was in Black Panther as, I want to say his first name Sterling. Yeah, Sterling Brown. That's it. Yeah, Sterling Brown's
Sterling
in it.
K. Brown.
Oh man, he's
Yeah.
awesome in this
Character
movie.
actor, too.
Love
So
him
good.
in this movie. Yeah, he's the dad, or I'm sorry, he's intro scene.
Uncle or brother?
Yeah,
or something
uncle.
Like that?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So yeah, I love him in this movie, and that's just an underrated sort of dystopian flick that I really dug. Quiet Place is also on my list because Quiet Place was a very unique spin that I think in 10 to 15 years we'll look at already, because Netflix shits out movies that are trying to rip off of Quiet Place in like the sensory deprivation horror vibe that's been going. But in 10 or 15 years, we'll look at the Quiet Place as sort of like on that family tree of cool, innovative ways to reinvigorate the horror genre that, you know, M. Night Shyamalan deserves a little bit of credit here too. The Happening got shit on a lot, but The Happening's sort of the daddy of Quiet Place, in my opinion, and where the environment is the horror and the unknown, and the senses are attacked. Anyways, Quiet Place is on there. Mission Impossible Fallout, we talked about a little bit. All right, let's get into it. We've been waiting for this moment. Sicario, Day of Soldado is on my list. And it's on my list because it did enough and it varied enough from the... If you wanted another Sicario, I don't know how it would have happened, because Sicario is a very unique sort of rollout of a movie.
It's its own thing.
Yes. And I applaud Day of Soldado because it kept it entrenched in the world of Sicario, and it did its own thing. While its own thing may not have been as cool and as attention grabbing as the first movie was, because it was in the hands of a better director, arguably, than this one was, the extension of the characters and seeing a little bit more of the Benicio del Toro character and how just seeing him fleshed out was cool to me.
Yeah, I liked the movie until the ending. The ending left me hanging, and it didn't feel like, okay, it's just the second piece of a third movie that's going to come. I didn't even feel that. I just felt like I would have liked the movie a lot more if the third act and the ending was better. Right. I liked following Benicio del Toro's character, and
there are some tense moments in that movie. The caravan scene when they're driving out into the desert and they're being fucking... well, I don't know what that terminology. They're being cut off at all angles by the cartel guys, and the shootout that takes place after that.
Being directed where they want them to go.
Yeah, the opening scene, the terrorists in the grocery store, is fucking nuts and caught me really off guard. And from that moment on, I was like, I was into the sequel being not on par with the first one as far as intensity is concerned. And that's what I wanted out of Sicario 2, was just the level of intensity to be matched, and I got it. The first Purge is on here because I love the whole Purge series.
First Purge was great.
And the first Purge is really cool and tapped into the little details that I was missing from the other Purge movies, like how did this all get started, quite literally. And so the first Purge tackled it, and it did it pretty well, in my opinion. Another horror movie that doesn't get a lot of credit is Hellfest. Again, I saw this movie 6-7 months ago, so maybe I'm overstating how good it is. But if you are a fan of haunted houses, and if you are a fan of gore and hard R and slashers as well, because this is just a psychopath who goes to haunted houses and kills people there for no rhyme or reason, although you're given a very shocking ending in the last five minutes, in my opinion. But the rest of the movie is just creative ways of killing teenagers while they're at a haunted house, and it's done pretty well. So I'm on board with that. Three Identical Strangers, and the last one is Sorry to Bother You. So
Yeah, I almost had that on my list. I really enjoyed it.
We have not seen it yet, so don't spoil.
Okay,
anything.
no spoilers. The first half of it is essentially a office drama, and I really dug it, and it gave me vibes of my old place of work and the sort of conversations that we had there. And then the second half is off the rails fucking stuff. And yeah, that's a good mix of movies for me.
Yeah, we've really been wanting to see it, but we haven't had the opportunity yet. But yeah, we really want to see it.
And everything else was mentioned, so yeah.
All right.
Morgan.
All right. I liked Red Sparrow.
Damn.
I thought as far as a spy movie goes, thought it was pretty good. I liked The Mule.
Yeah.
Clint Eastwood, that was a good one. I thought. I like the movies he does anyway. But The Old Man as the drug trafficker was pretty interesting. I like White Boy Rick. Matthew McConaughey about
I haven't seen that one.
No.
and he plays the father of a kid as a teenager in the 80s that's an FBI informant. It's again true life stuff coming to the film. It's pretty good story. I don't know why you guys don't like comedies or why you don't mention comedies, so I feel like it's my place to give you comedies. Super Troopers 2 was this year. Not as good as the first, but it was solid.
Yeah, my favorite parts of that movie.
It's Canadian.
Yeah, my favorite parts of that movie are like when they pull the family over in the van and they try to get them to say bad words in funny ways. Yeah, so there was a lot of good wholesome Canadian humor in that movie. It just by about the halfway point, I was like,
it's dumb comedy, but it's all right.
Yeah,
You can't recapture what the first movie was.
Yeah, the first one.
But solid. Game Night. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a
Jason
good one.
Bateman,
Yeah,
good
that's a
one. Where they're playing games and the game turns real or whatever.
Yeah, like The Game with Michael Douglas and Sean Penn. It's like a comedy version of that.
Yeah, pretty good one. Life of the Party was this year as well.
I am surprised you mentioned that because you shit on Melissa McCarthy.
No, I don't. I shit on how she's used.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's why she is a good actress. She's funny. She can be serious. I like her a lot. I just shit on the fact that for a long time in every movie you had to have her, climb a fence.
And that was her making it phase, right?
Yeah, but it went way too long, right? Sliding across the hood of a car.
You like that movie where Melissa McCarthy plays an oaf? Yeah, I like that movie too.
Yeah, right.
I almost mentioned Happy Time Murders because I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, that was
too.
Yeah,
that was an off the wall one. That's a good double feature with Mr. Rogers' documentary.
Right? Yeah.
Happy Time Murders and that.
Exactly. Yeah, fits right in.
I'm the one guy sitting at the table that thought Skyscraper was all right.
No, I thought it was all right.
I saw the movie. I'm good.
I thought it was all right, but all right doesn't equate to honorable.
It's a nice action movie and
there's
tall skyscraper.
What does the word honorable mean to you? Does it mean all right?
Yes. In this case, I knew you would crap on it.
Was it Die Hard, basically?
Yeah,
not
with
really.
a paraplegic.
A paraplegic?
I'm sorry.
He was missing a leg, sir.
Prosthetic. Whoops.
Had a prosthetic leg.
Whoops. Wrong terminology.
And
that is a paraplegic.
No.
Oh. Whoops. That's a Canadian thing. That is.
I don't think that's a thing.
Okay, sorry.
Equalizer 2 was this year as well. So Denzel back as the Equalizer.
Fuck off. I forgot Equalizer 2.
Yeah, solid.
That is a good one.
Good action movie. And lastly, I did like Robin Hood 2018. Again, another different take on an old story.
Yeah, sorry, no.
It was solid.
That was a shitty movie.
It was solid.
That was Taron Egerton and Jamie Foxx at their worst. Nobody will remember that movie. Robin Hood is a bad movie.
It's a solid movie. you got to have you can't make the same. Well, they make
Robin
the same
Hood?
movie over and over again, but it's
As
just
he's
a
defending
different.
Robin Hood. They can't make the same movie over and over again.
But I'm saying that it's just a different twist on it, and it fit. It was fine. It
Fair enough.
worked.
I
The
haven't seen
villain
it.
looked like he was. Is it set in those times, like in the Middle Ages or something like that?
Yeah, it's set in the Crusade times essentially.
Okay, during
Let
the
me-
Crusades.
Oh, go
I was
ahead.
gonna say the villain in that movie in the trailers looked like he was wearing an Armani suit from today, so it kind of threw me off. Like
No.
the fucker, it was just like,
What was
costumes
the uniqueness of this Robin Hood movie that made it qualify as okay?
Well,
Let me put you in the hot seat
well,
because
he wasn't.
was he a kid or a college kid age? Is that the
Was he
the
better?
catch?
Was he better
No,
than
he
the
wasn't.
Russell Crowe version of Robin Hood?
I don't remember that one either. I mean, I've
I
seen it.
liked that one too. Yeah,
That was
Sorry.
that was Ridley
Scott.
Scott.
Carrie
and that was
Elwes
solid.
will always be my Robin Hood in tights.
Kevin- With me, it's Costner. He'll
yeah,
always-
Costner's pretty good. Yeah, with that terrible English accent. But
So Robin Hood's like weird because you always want to see renditions of it. It's like King Arthur almost. That medieval time
this
period.
thing was like a different world a little bit.
Yeah, and we're always interested in seeing it on the
Yeah.
big screen. But this particular one didn't do anything that made it catchy. Yeah.
I don't know. I think you just got to step back and just look at
The
it.
fact that Little John was black, is that like the hook?
Wait, he was Little John?
Yeah, Jamie Foxx.
Oh, I knew. I thought I knew.
Is that the hook? Is that the
It
dynamic
was
that
Jamie
they were
Foxx.
running
Yeah.
with? Yeah.
The trailer just didn't look interesting, so I haven't seen
Yeah.
it.
Is there a
But-
movie set in during that time, either during the Crusades or during the Middle Ages, that it wasn't a bomb?
Kingdom
Because-
of Heaven.
Did that do really good?
Oh, that's
Troy was
not.
way
great.
earlier.
Whatever.
Yeah, Kingdom of Heaven.
Okay, that's one because I feel like
That
there's,
one was solid.
there's a
but,
King Arthur movie that comes out every 4 years that bombs.
and Robin Hood, and I like most of them.
Fair
Like,
enough.
You probably
Yeah.
like the one.
You
with
just love
Clive
that
Owen.
era. Yeah, I think. you
yeah, like and I like the slightly different takes on the storylines too.
Yes.
I bet this guy goes to Renaissance Festival. Wait, you actually?
Yeah,
do it on-
maybe I do.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't.
I
They'll be shitting on Renaissance Festival.
I empathize with
I
why
might have
this
a
is-
wooden sword that I beat the shit out of a dummy with every now and then.
No,
I do empathize with why this is
Listen,
on your
hey,
list.
listen,
You
when-
want to see a good Robin Hood
When the
movie.
apocalypse
I want to see a
comes,
good Robin Hood movie too.
I will be prepared.
This wasn't a good
We
Robin.
run out of bullets, I'll have my swords.
Oh.
Yeah.
No.
You ever notice, like in any horror movie, if the guy just had a sword, it'd be a totally
That's
different
yeah.
story.
Michonne is able to tear through so much ass
Right,
in Walking
exactly.
Dead because of her goddamn katanas. It's like fuck a gun. She just tore through 24 of these fuckers. Like,
So
Yeah.
is that your last honorable
Yes,
mention?
that's my last honorable mention.
All
I
right.
was trying to get you to remove it.
No,
Well, all my honorable mentions have been mentioned.
good.
So
Nice.
That's how honorable they were.
Yeah. Well, mine was Black Panther.
Oh wait, I do have one more. Good.
Oh, proceed, good
We
sir.
cannot-
Since you don't have anything.
Yes, we cannot leave this year
Well-
without talking about Jurassic Park: The Fallen Kingdom.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah,
It
yes,
was
we
so
can.
good. That one scene
He's being
where
facetious.
You are
The di-
you are a liar. Don't even talk about it.
where the
See, this
For
is
the-
why I.
the island's blowing up and the
But when you
poor
say Robin Hood, I
dinosaurs.
think you're in the same
Rude.
vibe. You're being facetious about Robin Hood.
Rude.
no, I'm not.
You like that movie?
Yes, I liked Robin Hood.
He likes.
Fuck you.
are you fucking around with Jurassic Park? Did you dislike
Yes,
it?
I am fucking around with Jurassic Park because
Okay.
what is the one scene that gets everyone?
The
In
dinosaur
Fallen
being
Kingdom?
left on the island.
That's not even why I don't like the movie, though. Like that scene is sad, but
It's
the rest of the.
Oh, is it the
fucking
little
piece of
girl
shit
clone
movie-
storyline that
That
makes no
went nowhere.
fucking sense?
Just the
It's
whole rest
weird.
of the movie. They used every trope from every Jurassic Park movie in this one movie, and it sucks.
Who directed that piece of shit?
Some fucking idiot.
Yes.
No, it was that fucking guy who did Batteries Not Included. Or not.
Hey,
No,
I
I'm
like
sorry.
Batteries not
Uh,
included.
It is. No, wait. It's some guy who made.
30 years ago.
It's not that. It's something else that's very similar to Batteries Not
J.A.
Included.
Bayona?
No, I'm thinking of Taika Waititi now.
Oh,
What
watch
was
those
the-
Heathers, dude.
Back off of
Yeah,
him.
it's Jay Barona. He's a piece of shit. But
did he make that you hate so much?
no. Taika Waititi. What was the movie that put him on the map? Safety Not
Ragnarok.
Guaranteed. What's Safety Not Guaranteed?
No, the Safety Not Guaranteed that's a movie with what's her face from Aubrey Plaza.
Who directed that?
That wasn't Taika Waititi.
No.
Who directed Safety Not Guaranteed? Colin Trevorrow.
That's the fucking guy who either did this or Jurassic World.
Apparently, because Bryce Dallas keeps showing up under his shit.
That fucking guy
Are they married?
did Jurassic World.
Anyways,
It's a hodgepodge.
It is a terrible movie, but
my last honorable mention was going to be
Colin
Red Sparrow, but
Mm.
Morgan already talked about it.
What movie?
Red Sparrow.
What'd you like about it? Because I'm surprised you liked it.
Well, it's a spy movie.
Tell you
with
what I liked about it.
Jennifer Lawrence. Terrible.
J-Law in her fappening prime too.
Oh man.
Sorry. Yeah.
That's right.
No.
No, this isn't the
No.
podcast for the fappening.
No, it's not. So, but Black Panther, Bohemian Rhapsody, Infinity War, those were all part of my honorable mention. So I didn't have a long list in 2018, so they were all pretty commercial.
Red Sparrow's underrated critically.
Yeah, I think that people saw Jennifer Lawrence and doing a Russian accent and were not happy with it. So, which I think
you got to get past some of that stuff sometimes. I mean, you got to. It's a movie.
well, and it's based off of a very successful book series about sparrows and Jennifer Lawrence's character and where she goes with Edgerton, Joel Edgerton. Character too, and infiltrating the Russians.
Two people I like: Jennifer Lawrence and Joel Edgerton. So.
Yeah, and it's director Francis
Lawrence,
Francis Lawrence, who also did the Hunger Games trilogy,
and Constantine,
four movies.
Overrated.
Constantine?
Yes.
Oh Lord!
Fuck out of here! You just put Robin Hood on your.
I sure did.
Oh, you
mentions.
can't be trusted.
Yeah.
Or can I?
If I have a choice between Robin Hood 2018 and Constantine, I'm watching Constantine every day of the week.
Well, good for you.
You're not?
No.
Alrighty.
The end.
And the end.
Yeah, you saw.
And that is 2018.
I'm gonna make Maggie work on that edit.